Qatar, and they belong to the Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec. So yes, Quebec has pulled a coup d'etat on Canada. They're now patrolling the airport, they're guarding the parliament, they're guarding the Supreme Court, but they have absolutely no right. These people should be federal employee and of course answering to the people, yet they are once again a foreign corporation. So speaking of the Supreme Court, this picture is glorious. This is Denis at the Supreme Court procedure. This picture was provided and taken by Angèle, hereby present. So thank you for documenting the proof. So yeah, we live in a sad world where Garda World, the fascist corporation, think they're the master. And yet they kick people out of the hospital and they have no heart because this guy has no leg, he has nowhere to go, he has no house, and yeah, it's normal. So back to commenting what happened before I skipped to the second case. I was formally criminally charged for death threat for what you've just heard. The recording on the previous sequence. When I say to him that he should be hanged for his own crime, I'm not responsible. He's really acting criminally. This is criminal negligence and treason and a bunch of other stuff. By that date you saw there, then he was not yet king. It happened before. So treason is much likely not to be a thing, but yet still criminal negligence. But the thing is, I plead guilty at the court of Mont-Laurier for that in exchange for an unconditional absolution, which means basically it is in the best people's interest that you don't get a criminal record for anything. And that was my last day in Quebec. We had a plan B with Denis, we bought an RV, and this is how I got back to British Columbia. Beautiful British Columbia. If you, once again, don't believe me, you don't have to. The fact proved that it says on the sign, when you get there, best place on earth. So you can check it for yourself if you ever come to the Rockies, and you can always tell by my home, unless you work for Garda World or the Sorties Québec. But yeah, I got away with it several times. I was in court possibly 50 times in my life, if not more. That was just for me. I went there probably another 50 times for other people. It was quite a journey, but it's all about the journey. It's not about reaching the goal. Of course, my roots are deeply ingrained into British Columbia. My own father lived there for several decades. I was posted there as a military in 2004. When they ordered me back to Quebec in 2008, I was crying. There's nothing I haven't done. I yelled. I wasn't even ready to go to military jail until I found out that the jail was around Edmonton. So I said, fuck that. I'm sorry for the language. So I said that. And yeah, they ordered me back to Quebec. I was really disappointed, but because I was a good military, a good sailor, I've obeyed the order, but I've obeyed backward. But fortunately, the outcome of this thing, by me going back to Quebec, this is how I ended up meeting Denis 2 years later. In 2010 was the first encounter, so I'm counting now on my 9th year of friendship with that guy who has provided me with the tool and of course, I've set forward a remedy for the future because of this suffering, like I said earlier. Now we're going to get into Angèle's case. She has no idea what's ahead. She's provided the picture that we see here and the text, so I'm going to invite Angèle to take this part, follow the slide, and talk about her own story. When we did the convention in Lloydminster the other day, she wasn't here, so I did that part, but she did write, and so she can comment. So please, Angèle, I would like to invite you to speak about your case.
And then you can talk, if you like.
Everything's written.
Yeah.
It's easy.
I'll read it, and then you can add.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah?
So I invite you to step here because we cannot go with the microphone in front of Angèle. Je vous invite à venir ici. On peut pas se promener avec le microphone devant les haut-parleurs.
So you'll do the slides?
Yes.
So we'll share. So Angèle and her family lived on native land, and they produced artisan products made from the maple supply that their lands provided. They wanted to sell their homemade products independent from the Syrup Federation. And in this picture you can see
Well, you can see that my husband is there with his bucket. We are preparing to. I'm trying to make a short story. We had trouble with the neighbor. The neighbor where we live. The neighbor, when he got to his retirement, he came to our place and he said, "You don't want to settle with the federation. You're gonna have to live with. You're gonna have to for 20 years of trouble. You don't want to settle with the federation." So I said, what is he talking about? Why does he come here to tell me about the federation and maple syrup? Because the federation probably said that Angel and Regent are your neighbor, and we had a rights of way on his land, so he decided to stop us from going to the. He did everything to stop us from going to the sugar shack, because the federation was behind him to tell him that we had to obey to him. So we had spent that week of the March 2013. We had spent 2 days in court for the rights of way with the neighbor. 2 days, and then on Thursday night. On Thursday, we found out that the big 2,000 liters back from to get the maple sap, they were full of clear water. There was really the beginning of the maple sugar time. And then the Friday March 18 on the Journée Internationale des Femmes. I was getting ready because my husband had started to boil the water already, and then I was at home getting ready to go to the sugar shack, because we were going to be there for about a month. When I got to the shack, I didn't see him, but I did see his snowmobile. I said, our cousin was there, and he said, "Did you see the cops?" I said, "What cops?" There were 3 cars of police that came to the shack to bring my husband to jail, because the week before the neighbor has jumped himself in front of the snowmobile, the big snow blower behind the tractor. My husband was opening the driveway, and he jumped right in front of the blower. So he made a criminal case to the police. So the police came right on the first day that we were getting the maple season started. Funny thing happened. So when I get there, there was no police, and he said the 3 cars of police came to bring him to jail. So I called a friend who is a lawyer, and he said it was a Friday, and it was about 11 in the morning. And he said, if you want to have your husband back, you have to go to the Palais of Injustice and pay $500 to get him out. So I tried to find $500, and when I got to the Palais of Injustice, it was 3:30, I think, because at 4 o'clock they would have brought it to Trois-Rivières for about a week. So forget about the season of maple syrup, okay? So when I got the $500 in my hand, I didn't go home to change. I went to the Palais of Injustice with my boots, my wood boots, and my square jacket, and my hole in my tuck, and I went right there to get him out, because otherwise, if he suppose I couldn't go to the Palais of Injustice to pay the $500, they would have brought him in jail in Trois-Rivières. So we know that the maple season is very short, and the first week is usually the best week. So if he's not there, we cannot produce any maple syrup. That's a scam from the federation. The federation, they said, you're gonna give us your maple syrup, and you're not about to get paid. So if you don't want to apply with this, we're gonna seize your land. We're gonna seize your maple syrup, and that's what they wanted. That's what they tried to do. And that's what happened. And when you see this is not smoke. This is the steam from the boil.
So it's boiling right now.
It's
and they're
it's
taking
boiling.
it
Yeah,
away.
it was started. Anyway, it was starting.
All right, Maureen,
Next slide.
we're on.
Oh. So production of maple syrup was an ancestral inheritance for Angèle and her family. The artisan hobby was established long before the establishment of the Syrup Federation. They claimed freedom of association from the Quebec Federation of Maple Syrup Producers, which was denied by all the courts. All the courts from civil to appeal court, 30 to 35 judgments against them, all with the same conclusion: doomed to failure, no chance of success.
Yeah, because first when I went to the grand jury, I was talking about two laws. The laws that the Federation the Federation of Maple Syrup has the obligation to defend its members, and at the same time they have the power to sue them. So those two laws, they cancel each other, because you cannot defend and prosecute at the same time, right? So I was wondering why, and I always ask them, why do they prosecute us if they have the obligation to defend us? But they never wanted to answer me. The courts, the judges, they always said this is a doomed failure doomed to failure, and we lost every case, and yeah, that's what they did.
So Angèle was at risk of losing all of her ancestral land to the Federation through a seizure process between 2005 and 2016. She filed a procedure to take her case to the Supreme Court in 2016. She was advised by the registry to file an injunction to delay the seizure process and protect her lands. She did, and after 30 days had passed, none of the defendants had objected to her injunction, therefore resulting in a default judgment from the Supreme Court, stamped and filed by the Registrar of the Supreme Court. Stéphane Racette was the, what do you call him? Registrar. The Federation continued to harass Angèle with bogus claims and fines, each one resulting in a court appearance. She bravely tore up the 3 recent judgments in front of the Quebec Appeals Court and told them that if Freedom Association had been respected, she would not be here today. Every time she had to go to court, it was at least $350 for each appearance. Angèle asked the appeals court to provide her with a judgment, which they did. She then had to apply to the Supreme Court for a second time.
Parlez de la Cour d'appel, s'il vous plaît. Quand on enregistre.
Yes, there was a fine from the Federation of $108,000, and the last time we received that judgment, I said to myself, I have to apply, otherwise I will lose by default, and they would freeze our account, and they would yeah, feed themselves with this. So I said I have to go to. So I applied to the appeal court in Quebec, and it cost me $340 just to apply there. And then I had to make the procedure and everything and send it to the bailiff in Quebec City. And when because I to enter to send my procedures at the Supreme Court, I needed a judgment from the appeal court. So I didn't care if it was going to be on our side. I knew it was not going in our favor. So we went to the appeal court in Quebec, and and Jean-François and Denis were with us. There were 4 of us. And usually because it was not the first time I went to the appeal court, and the judges were familiar to me, and they recognized me also. They said, you're not supposed to talk, but I said I had the freedom of expression, I'm going to talk. Okay, go ahead. So I told them about the 1968 coup d'état, and I told them that they were traitors, and I read them what it says on the 1951 judgment from the Supreme Court, and I said that this is not valid, and I tore apart 3 judgments, 2 from the civil procedures with the neighbor, and 1 from the Federation, and there was for about $150,000 of fines in there, and I threw them up and I said, you are traitors, you have to quit the boat, you're done. Yeah. And she said, we're going to, not retreat, but we're going to almost retire, comment on dit ça?
So retreat.
We're going to retrieve, we see that you're going to retrieve you too. I said, yeah, I don't have to talk to you, you're not valid. So the guy, the security guy, he said, okay, get out of there. So when we got out in the hallway, there were about 7 cops there. And he said, you go away, go away. I said, wait a minute, I'm going to wait for the king first. But they were really afraid of us. We were just telling the truth. And I'm not arguing with them. I just told them that you are traitors, you don't have any power, and you have to get out of here.
So that's exactly, I'm gonna add on to this one. So that's exactly what they've done. When she told them that they were a traitor, they stepped up, they did a little bowing before her, and they went into the back room. So yeah, that's the way you treat courts. Mm-hmm. Don't take from them.
And I said, I'm going back home, and when I get home, I want to have the judgment on my computer. It was there for the second time, because the year before, that was the same thing. I needed those 2 appeal court judgments to go to the Supreme Court, and I had them. So.
Next slide, please.
It was through this lengthy court process that they discovered that the Quebec Federation of Maple Syrup Producers was in a conflict of interest. On September 12, 1990, the National Assembly granted the Quebec Federation of Maple Syrup Producers the regulatory power, the power to enforce the Marketing Act and Chapter M35, which is the power to prosecute. On November 15, 2011, the judgment of Carol Julien is as follows. The Federation acts in this case not as a union but as a marketing agency, is responsible for exercising powers provided by the law. So this body cannot have the obligation to defend its members and the power to prosecute them at the same time. And the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General, they all knew and did not correct this situation. We were betrayed and kept in ignorance to better control us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we didn't know. We knew that there was some. They could not defend and prosecute at the same time, but we didn't know what to do. But after the grand jury, when I watched the videos a couple of months later, after September, I noticed that Mr. Lebrun said that what happened back in 1968, and when he said that there was a coup d'état and they were formed irregularly from the 1968, I said to myself, wait a minute, they don't have any power, they do what they want. Like I said at the appeal court, now we're going to make laws like we want. We're going to make laws that cancel each other, and we're going to make laws that we won't even respect within our organizations. So they do what they want. They do laws like they shit. Sorry.
Don't look at me, I swear.
Well, but they make laws like they want, and their laws are not valid because there is no constitution, there is no legislative council. Because back in 1968 they got rid of the legislative council, and these people are there to tell the truth. And if there is no legislative council, they cannot tell you if the laws are constitutional. So there is no legislative council, so they make laws that they want. And their laws are not valid, so we just found out that everything that they've done, they're not valid. So they accused us, they persecuted us, they sent my husband in jail for two or three times. They did everything to stop us from working on our land, on our maples, our patrimoine. And they had no power. So I'm not going to let it go like this. I'm not going to let it go like this.
Next slide is what happened. Remember this? What's this? Just don't put the microphone in front of the... Thank you. Ça, c'est la Cour suprême.
Oh, no, it was a Friday afternoon, and the Stéphane Racette, the registrar from the Supreme Court, called me twice to tell me that I had a file number, and that I just had to pay $75 to apply at the Supreme Court. Instead of appeal court, it's $350.
Oh.
So it was on a Friday afternoon. This guy was really smart because I think he understood. Because the first time we went there, I was crying and I said, "They're gonna steal our land." He said, "Make an injunction." That's what I did, and nobody answered. So I didn't know. I don't play chess, but I think I would be very good at it.
Yeah, Angèle, she's looking at me. The injunction thing. I've also went through the procedure of the Supreme Court, and I was we're really well into this process, and I also told her to write an injunction to stop the prevention of crime, and then she did, and we went back to the Supreme Court several times. I'm going to take the mic for this part.
So much so that at the end of the Supreme Court, they didn't want to hear anything from me. They sent the RCMP, their biggest badass RCMP, tried to prevent me to going for the Supreme Court. Fortunately for me, and unfortunately for them, I'm more intelligent than that, so I had my minion called Denis Paiement, which was not prevented to go at the Supreme Court. They were really afraid that I would arrest them right there. So he went up with his wheelchair and his assistant, because they provided him with the assistance of the Supreme Court through the elevator and everything. He got the document stamped like a champion. We did receive that injunction. It is valid to this day for any of you to use, not just Angèle or Denis or myself. We made sure that our case at that point was a constitutional case based on freedom of association, like Angèle told you. If they don't respect freedom of association or peaceful assembly, exactly what we're doing today, we are doomed. We have no more freedom. Freedom of speech without freedom of assembly is completely useless. I can yell all I want in my living room, right? No one will listen. That's why we get all of these. So we're fighting now for freedom. There's nothing else in as goal in our book than freedom. And we hope that we can extend all these freedom from you. This is why you are here, based on your free will and goodwill, as of course, under your own dollar. You came in this place. Most of you, except for the people who organized, didn't have anything to pay but your gas and food to be here. So the door was open. Well, the way you see it, you can still see, you know. So you're free to leave. Freedom is very much at the core of what we're doing. So we're going to finish with Angèle's case. On the next slide here, I'm going to keep on reading, Maureen, it's okay. So Angèle at the Supreme Court identified all 9 judges of the Supreme Court of Canada associated to her previous judgments. So they were seen before in her case, since she went to court so many times, and they have just a limited amount of fake judge. As being in conflict of interest with their association to the Federation of Maple Syrup BBB producer. Cost only $75, so twice, to appeal at the Supreme Court of Canada, which is much more cheaper in common law than it is in Quebec. Angèle found a buyer, and that was a miracle. She said to you she was crying and everything. Well, one point, Angèle and Régent, they came to my place where I used to live, and they didn't know what to do and everything, and they were ready to throw the towel and do all sorts of stuff to fight for their land. So I said to them, why don't you just put a sign for sale in front of it? Fortunately for them, 2 weeks later, she called me back. She said, we sold and we're moving to New Brunswick. So that probably saved their life, and much more than just their life. All their work times saving and living. Now they can enjoy retirement with freedom of association, which is much better in my view. I am sad that they've they got their land stolen, because Régent, which is right there, is an absolute magnificent gardener. I went there once or twice. I saw the place. It was pristine.